and thanks for joining us for another episode of Mid-American Gardener. I'm your host, Tanisha Spain, and joining me in-house today to talk about all things green and growing are two of our faves. We've got Phil and John. We'll have them introduce themselves before we jump right in with today's discussion. So Phil, we'll start with you.
We are two faves tonight. Some other night will be some other.
Well, I have to say it to
Well,
everybody.
yeah. You have to be that way.
Exactly.
I'm Phil Nixon. I'm a retired extension entomologist with University of Illinois Extension. And so I cover anything that creeps and crawls.
Yep. Okay, John.
I'm John Bodensteiber. I'm a Vermilion County Master Gardener, and I am kind of a
generalist.
generalist.
Yeah, you
I
like all the things. Yeah. Okay. All right. So Phil, we're going to start with you. Do you want to start with bonsai or
Sure,
the
we'll start
photos
with
that you
the
sent in?
bonsai.
Okay.
One thing that we tend to get into at this time of year is concerns about what do you do with some plants that you want to keep over the winter and so on. And myself being into bonsai, that becomes very much a factor. What you have is a situation that trees that would normally be able to survive out in your yard aren't necessarily going to be able to survive in a pot or a small piece of soil, because you end up with the soil freezing and thawing through the winter. And as it freezes and thaws, the soil changes volume or flexes and breaks roots. And so if that happens a lot of times, you end up having a nice looking tree that leaves out due to the water that's in the stems and so on. But pretty soon figures out I ain't getting new water from the roots, and and about 3 weeks later, they just all of a sudden wilt and died. And that's not only just a case for bonsai, it's for any plant that you're wanting to try to overwinter, that whether it's hardy or not, you need to protect the soil. Essentially, they've done some work on and some research on temperatures, and they found out that many of the trees, in fact, most of the trees in the Midwest, the tops may be able to handle 20 below zero, 30 below zero, but their root systems, many times, it's rare to find one that can handle temperatures below zero.
Interesting.
Most of them are many times 15, 20 degrees above zero, and so on. And in fact, throughout, as you get into the central part of Mid-America, essentially from the central Illinois or Indiana or Ohio South, much of the soil doesn't even freeze during the wintertime, or just the very top part of it does. The part that has many of the roots does not freeze. And so these plants are much more susceptible to cold on their root system than you would think. So even a bonsai like this, that's sitting out and theoretically would stay cold all winter and not freeze and thaw as you get warmer days and colder days, would likely die anyway due to the temperature in the soil being more exposed to the outside air, getting way below what it would normally get out in nature or in your yard, in your landscape. And so these plants will die out that way. I mean, we've probably all seen, maybe I'm more sensitive to it than others, but you go to a mall or something, and they have these trees, small trees planted out in big pots out in front of the door opening, and they look good all winter. And they get into about May or so, and for some reason they change what's in the pots. And if they don't change what's in the pots, you realize that this nice needled evergreen, a juniper or a spruce, that look great all winter, is now just toasty brown because it was sitting there and it got this effect on it. And so so what you need to do is protect it. And there's several ways to do that.
Okay.
And this can be done for things like geraniums you're trying to keep over the winter. Lantanas even are relatively hardy compared to many of what we call tender perennials. And tender perennials is what we tend to refer to these sorts of plants.
What about big bananas? Would that
Bananas
same
are
advice?
probably even a little more tender.
Yes. Okay.
But they do have hardy types of varieties of bananas that would probably fall into that category.
Okay.
Supposedly can handle like zone 7 or 8 or something like that.
And we got just we got just kicked up to zone 6B.
6A or 6B?
Yeah,
I can't
right.
remember which one,
6A.
but yes,
Back up, yeah.
So that'll change some of the plants.
it will. It will. So
Yeah,
you
and
do you
then
keep these
And I
in
agree with what my wife said, and that is, they can change it, but I'm not going to.
like that? Do you bring this inside? Do you store it in the garage? Do you,
Actually,
greenhouse?
what this one does,
what will you
what
do?
this one is that it came out of a cold greenhouse. We
Cold
actually
greenhouse.
have a greenhouse that we allow to drop down well, when we have sub-zero temperatures outside. And with a greenhouse, the glass allows a lot of air movement in. And so we will get it, it will drop down into the high to mid 20s during the wintertime. Buckets of water will freeze on top, but they don't freeze throughout. So that's that's kind of the creme de la creme, and we haven't
Okay.
had that greenhouse for very many years. Because, those are expensive babies. And so, but an alternative is you could sink this pot down to the rim in soil outside,
Okay.
and it would do well. A garage, even though it's not heated, if it's an attached garage, many times if you use a thermometer on cold mornings as you go out after a cold night, you'll find those warmer spots in the garage where you might be able to keep these. Many attached garages, parts of a garage at least, if a door is kept shut during most of the day and night, are not going to drop below freezing. Crawl spaces in houses work well for this too many times.
Okay.
Once the plant has gone dormant, as you can see this one, what leaves it does have are pretty well gone to yellow. They are no longer functioning. And where they've dropped off, this is a deciduous bonsai. It drops its leaves just like the ones outside. Add leaf color, you can still see some of it on it. They do not need light. So as long as it's in this state before it starts breaking bud in the spring, even though it's dark, it's fine. And that's
Okay.
a way to cushion your temperature is by using a cover over it to hold that temperature in during cold nights. You can use a cover cloth to help protect that, just like you would some tender plants in the spring from it, or in the fall.
Keeping
So
with
these are all ideas on how you can save some of those tender perennials that you have potted up and enjoy them next spring.
Excellent. Keeping with that weather theme, John, I want to go to you. We had a couple questions come in kind of along that same vein. I mentioned that I had some tulips that I did not get in the ground, and Mary Klusky says, yes. Is it too late to get those in the ground? I assume yes if it's frozen, but if it warms up a little bit, will it be okay? And I saw that it's going to be in the 50s, or maybe we'll catch a couple more warm days. Can you go put those tulips in the ground?
I noticed on the way over here from Danville, farmers were still out plowing their fields, so the ground is still workable.
Okay.
So as long as the ground is workable, you could plant them. What I would do is get them in as soon as I could, make sure you water them in, because we are kind of dry here, and then heavy mulch over them.
Got it.
And that should insulate the soil, and so that it's not, like Phil was saying, we're not changing the temperature a whole lot where the bulbs will actually not survive if it gets too cold.
Okay.
And so mulching will help. The other thing you can do is put them in a pot and force them later on, and then plant them in the spring. I would not just leave them in the bag, because they're probably not going to, if you've got them in a bag, they're probably not going to survive. But if you've got a pot, a fairly good sized pot, put them in there, and then come Easter or some time, a lot of people like to start their bulbs then and have something blooming. So that'd be the other alternative.
All right. On the opposite end of that, Sue Detheridge writes in, is it too late to dig up my cannas? I only planted 2 last spring, and the resulting plants were small but pretty. So is it too late to dig those up?
Okay, it might be, but I can guarantee you that if you don't dig them up, it's going to be too late.
It's a gamble, right?
But the ground, again, deep down is not frozen. Now, if they're in a pot, depending on, last night it got down to 19. And so it depends on where they're located and the soil temperature. I would still dig them up and take them in, protect them, get them in some peat moss or something like that in a cool place, no light, and and hope for the best. But yeah, those you're at the opposite at both ends of those. So
All right. And
I have a
go
couple little
ahead.
things to add to
Sure,
that.
sure, sure.
One thing when I was probably about 12 years old, and growing up just south of Springfield, Illinois, we caught some tulip bulbs on sale, and it was late December, early January. I mean, it was, what would normally sell for $25 was 25 cents.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
yeah,
And they were really trying to get rid of them. And I went out and I had a flower garden, a bed in my flower garden, and I dug into it. The soil was frozen down about 3 inches, or 2 to 3 inches. I was able to, what wasn't quote unquote frozen crust was such that you really couldn't work the soil. So I had bulbs that after I got them planted, even with my best efforts, I could still look down in and see the bulb through the cracks in the soil. Okay, it was that bad. And it stayed cold through the rest of the spring and so on, and pretty cold winter that winter. And I had probably 85% of those survived.
Wow.
And probably half of them flowered.
Tough.
I mean, it was just, and that bed stayed good for years and
Yep.
years. So even for those that have missed the time, rather than leave them on the shelf or throw them in the trash, if you
Get 'em
if you
out.
want to spend the energy, go out and plant them. You never know.
I'll give it a shot.
You just never know. And so and putting in terms with how my wife talked about, well, I'm not going to believe this temperature change sort of thing. You got 19 degrees last night. Where I live, we got 15.
oh,
So we happen to live in a little cold spot.
Yikes. Yeah, you do.
And so things can change that way.
Okay. All right. Let's see, John, one more for you, and you've got some show and tells to go with this one. Susan wants to know, what are some of your favorite plants and which ones do you have the most fun propagating and why?
I have so many, and depending on, I brought some of them. I noticed her question, and so there's some of them are really easy. Like this is a spider plant, and you can see there's little baby. I took this off of one of my mother plants, and you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plants right here. All I have to do is get the pot ready, cut these off, and drop them in, and I've got a new spider plant. And very carefree. One of the other, I had brought a Thanksgiving cactus the last show. And I had broke off a piece and said, I'll take this home and pot it. Well, I did, and you can see that it is growing, and it has actually a little bud. It's going to bloom. Now, I probably, after the show, I'm going to take that off. I'll take that off, because it really, when they're this young, you shouldn't allow them to flower, because
That gives it more energy for the root system?
The roots and for the rest of the plant,
Gotcha.
because it expends a lot of energy doing that.
Good to
One
know.
of the other ones that I really enjoy, and the kids at school have enjoyed, is the Sansevieria snake plant. And you can see I did cut one of the leaves of my giant ones off and just stuck it into the soil, and now I have one larger one, and if you look right in the corner,
I sort of saw it. There it is. That little baby in the corner.
right there,
Hiding.
just it's starting to come up. So out of one part of a long leaf, this has sprouted all this. Another one is, and this is so easy, this is the mother of thousands, mother of millions.
Yeah, that one does all the work for you.
And all you have to, these have got plantlets on them, and I'll just pick this one off, and you can see it's already got the little roots. And all I have to do is drop it on here, and I've planted that. And it'll grow. One of the other ones that I have, and I'm going to try doing 2 different types of propagation. As you can see, this one here has a little chick on it. This is a hen's and chick, and this has got a little chick on the side. But I've already taken off about, I'd say, a dozen of the little chicks off of this, and this is one of them. And so that one is already propagated. So that one is already easy. Now, if you can see this, it is going to flower. I will, once it does flower, and I think it is probably just a few days because this just erupted, but most of this is bracts and it's not really the flower. So I will have to get in there with a paintbrush and just go from flower to flower
Oh, gotcha.
and see if I can get some seeds, and I'll try propagating some, whether I'm successful or
That's
not.
more
It's
of the
just-
challenging end.
it is. This is a very challenging one. This part here where you just tear this off of, it's got a little root, it's already got roots. This is probably going to die after this flowers. It's going to spend so much energy. This probably is, and it's had its babies on the side, its chicks. So it's probably just going to wither up
Gotcha.
and die. So that's going to go. Another one
Do you
is,
make a buzzing sound while you use the
yes,
paintbrush?
I do.
For dramatic effect.
This one,
You never know.
this is Echeveria, and you can see I just laid a leaf on the ground here,
Yeah.
on the soil, and I've got 2 little babies coming from that. And this is one that's really, the kids like this because it is easy, it's carefree, and then
So that's it.
that's it. Those are some of my favorites.
And those
Now,
most of those were fairly easy to do.
and the Thanksgiving cactus. That's a cutting from my mom's grandmother's plant. So it's probably well over 100
Oh my gosh.
years old. So I had given part of it to my daughter, and she gave me another piece back. And so then that's the plant I brought the last show, and I broke a piece off. So I'll be able to share this with somebody
See,
else.
I
So
love that. That's the cool part about plants.
That's one of the reasons I enjoy doing it, because of the history, and then the smiles that you can share plants. That's one of the reasons I like doing the propagating, is just giving the plants away and letting people enjoy them.
Excellent. All right, John, thank you. Okay, Phil. So we are at that wonderful time of year again where we're bringing the forest inside,
Right.
and sometimes things come with.
Other parts of nature come with.
Yes. So give us some tips to not have that happen, or what to look for.
Okay. Well, one thing I want to mention is that we're talking about, cryptically talking about Christmas trees, live Christmas trees. And it's important to realize that Christmas trees that you go and buy at the lot or wherever the case are a form of Midwestern agriculture to a great extent. There are a few, probably still some Christmas trees that are cut up in the very far north part of the U.S. and in Canada that are naturally grown. But the bulk of Christmas trees that you're going to run across and purchase are really just as much a piece of an agricultural commodity as the corn and soybeans that you
Interesting.
drive by. And some people I talk to say, well, I never want to use a natural Christmas tree because, it's taking away from nature. No, you're taking food out of a farmer's mouth. That's what you're doing, okay? That tree is there because it's an agricultural commodity. It's grown to be a Christmas tree. It's grown to be it's grown a few years. It's then meant to be cut and sold. And if people did not buy them, you would not have the trees out there for several years, giving habitat for birds and insects and other creatures. And so a Christmas tree farm is typically not real heavy on the chemical applications. It's an area where many times land that would be not really grow crops very good otherwise would have it. And so buying one is not hurting nature. It's actually helping farmers. So. But there are some things that will come in on your Christmas tree, and I want to start out by saying that all of these problems that come about is when you really keep a Christmas tree indoors too long. Because all the critters that live on Christmas trees are baked with the idea that they're going to live through the whole winter and not come out in the middle of winter and freeze off. And so only when you have a Christmas tree in for weeks at a time do these things start to pop up. And calls that I've gotten, I've always asked, how long did you have the Christmas tree in? And typically they got the tree the first Friday or Saturday after Thanksgiving. And this is the second or third week of of
January?
January.
So it's time to go.
Sometimes mid-February. A couple of times late March.
Oh, gee.
They still have the darn Christmas tree indoors, which, as we all know, is a fire and a house fire waiting to happen.
Sure.
So they become very big. Well, one of the more common ones that we will find on Christmas trees is pine needle scale, which looks like white flecks.
This?
This is as you look close up at it. And they're really something that's not going to do anything to your tree inside. You may find them. They're not going to drop any sap. They're not going to do anything. They're an armored scale. Even if they become active, they don't do any damage. What's much more common are going to be spiders, and you will find spider nests. These will be just little web areas, which was in a previous picture, but there for a second. But they will hatch out into what we have here, and that is a bunch of spiderlings that will tend to balloon, and they'll get in front of the air duct and blow. This is the spider egg mass. It looks like a little piece of silk there. And but these are not going to hatch again until at least a month, maybe more like 6 or 8 weeks after you bring this inside, because they're not going to get fooled by a warm time. I've had calls of people that said, it looks like I have angel hair over my entire room.
Oh my
because they will
gosh.
you'll get hundreds of these little spiderlings come out, and they all spit out silks and blow on the silk. And the final one I really want to talk about are some of the aphids, and particularly on white pine, we get white pine aphid. Other Christmas tree varieties, particularly pines, have pine aphids as well. The one on white pine will show up as a little black spots you're seeing here on the needles, and those are on the outside of the needles. They're not embedded in, but even close up, they don't really look like eggs, but that is in fact what they are. And they will hatch out into little long-legged aphids, actually big long-legged aphids. Some of our largest aphids are in this group, and they will have quite long legs and suck up sap, but again will hatch out after, say, 5 or 6 weeks of the tree being inside, long after it's become a fire waiting to happen. So again, enjoy your Christmas trees. Don't worry about the pests. There are things that will hatch out, but only if you keep that tree inside way longer than it should be.
I've heard about people getting mantis sacks.
Occasionally you'll get mantis eggs. In fact, I had one year in which we bought a live Christmas tree to put outside, and it had a big mantis case on it. And as it turned out, during the time when we had the tree inside, which we only kept it indoors for about 2 weeks so it wouldn't break dormancy, and move the tree, put the tree back outside. During that 2 weeks, if this happened to be the Chinese mantis egg sac, which is kind of like a styrofoam ping pong ball on the stem, and we noticed it on there and didn't think a whole lot about it. During the time it was inside, we got some 20 and 25 below zero temperatures, which essentially killed all the outdoor eggs. We moved this one out and planted it, and it hatched out. And we had several others that we knew about in the yard, and they didn't hatch because they couldn't handle that severe cold temperature.
That's handy to have an entomologist around, isn't it?
So in a way, it was a good thing. In a way, it's a bad thing. This is a Chinese mantis that's not native to North America. It's thought to have perhaps decimated our native Carolina mantis that we have and our other native mantis species. On the other hand, because it was indoors, it survived, and we had mantises, and so it's a good thing, bad thing sort of thing.
Awesome. All right, John, one quick question. We've got about 2 minutes left.
Okay.
Let's see. Mary Klusky wants to know, is it okay to trim shrubs and branches throughout the winter in the woods that that person cares for, that she cares for?
Under almost always, yes.
Okay.
And the bush honeysuckle especially, yes.
Okay.
Trim that down to the other one. The other one that I had that I want just to talk about just a second was best fertilizer for rosemary. And depending on what type it is, it's best not to fertilize at all, because rosemary is a very easy to grow. You don't want to use real rich soil, because the more rich the soil, the faster it's going to grow. the less essential oils you're going to have in those leaves. And so composted manure, mushroom compost, would be the best, as you know, and no 10, 10, 10, 20. You just don't need that.
Don't need it with that. Okay, excellent. We got all of the Facebook questions answered. We got through all the show and tells. We didn't get to the book. We got about 30 seconds if you want to mention it real quick.
A new book that I've run across is Gardening for Moths. It's comes out of Ohio. It's relatively inexpensive. I think it was $25, $30 off of Amazon. I looked at local bookstores, didn't find it. But it is very, very well illustrated, tremendous photographs. And it will, if you're thinking about, if you've already done the butterfly gardening, that sort of thing, the bird gardening, moth gardening, they do more pollination probably than the butterflies because there's so many more of them. It's a good option. Think about it. It's a good Christmas gift.
We don't think about the moths quite enough. So, all right, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming in. Appreciate your time and talent. Thank you so much for watching. If you've got questions for us, send them in to yourgarden@gmail.com, or you can jump on Facebook, look for Mid-American Gardener, and send us a message there. We'll see you next time. Good night.